Testing, testing.
We're there. You live?
Yep, okay.
Okay, it's 6 p.m. on the 2nd of December, the year 2025, the Buckley City Council study session. Everybody's got their agenda and what is included in it. And the discussion item is safe streets for all. So I don't know if you want to start or we want to kick it straight
It goes straight to Mr. Dominic.
So we're gonna go to Mr. Dominic Miller from Gray and Osborne to brief us on this topic.
Yep.
Do I have to turn on the mic?
No, it's on.
It's on?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I am gonna promptly turn it over to Brent Turley of the Transpo Group. The Transpo Group is a sub-consultant to Gray and Osborne, and they have done extensive traffic modeling of the corridor. And to kind of frame the discussion here, we are focused on an existing traffic problem that happens in the PM hours most days of the week, where traffic coming from the Enumclaw side of the White River Bridge is trying to get into Buckley. Now, I will tell you before Brett gets started, 410, the shape of 410 through the city of Buckley is kind of like a hockey stick. So you have the east-west portion from, say, Mundyloss to 165 that's pronounceably east-west. Then it kind of goes northwest. Well, for purposes of this primary discussion, westbound and southbound are interchangeable, and northbound and eastbound are interchangeable. So just when you hear Brent say westbound traffic and you think, oh, well, it's south from Enumclaw. Well, we understand, but instead of saying west and south every time, I think some of the presentation materials are westbound. I will tell you that a bunch of the information is very technical. If you have questions as we go, stop Brent, ask. Brent will be able to answer some questions. There's some things that are heat maps that people aren't used to seeing. With that, I will turn it over to Brent. Which
All
I
right,
assume you're there, Brent.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, yeah, let's get started. Yeah, just my name's Brent Turley with the Transpo Group, as been explained, and we'll just dive right into this presentation. Let's go to the next slide. So the agenda that we want to talk about is there on the screen. Basically, I wanted to first go over there was a WSDOT congestion study that was done about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, because the data is like 2018 data, and they came up with they looked at the whole corridor, and I'll just do some background on that because that kind of feeds into what we're doing. The next thing is just to talk about the purpose of the updated analysis. Then we went out and actually collected data in spring of this year. So this is prior to all the bridge stuff. It was still free flowing and doing its normal thing in existing conditions. So we can report on that. Then we'll talk about what we assumed for the future 20-year forecast, and then jump into the future scenario results. So that's kind of where we're headed for this evening. Let's go to the next slide. So the congestion study that was done about 6 years ago, it actually went, it was a pretty far one. It went from Bonnie Lake all the way up to Enumclaw. Now it looked at that whole corridor with quite a few different intersections. Based, the normal kind of stuff with a congestion study, they wanted to see what kind of things you could do along the corridor to improve travel time, improve predictability, and traffic operations. So at that time, existing was 2018. And then usually with anything kind of traffic related, we do a 20-year forecast. So they rounded up and did 2040 for the long-term forecast. And then they also had a 2030 that they called a midterm forecast. Let's go to the next slide. So jumping ahead to what their conclusions from that study was, and they called these midterm strategies. So they said by 2030, this is what the corridor is going to need for improvements. So and they considered it basically like priority, like the first thing that they would do. WSDOT recommended first that Park Avenue would be converted from a signal to a roundabout. So basically taking that intersection, the one through lane in each direction, and just changing it from a signal to a roundabout. Same thing at Main Street, so kind of a similar kind of idea there. And also install a roundabout up at the 244th intersection, which is just north of the river. That's kind of the merge point north of the river getting down. So those were kind of the primary strategies. Next slide is other kind of things that they mentioned in the study. So they said,
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Quick question. What does restrict access at 244th Avenue Southeast mean? And I'm not sure if my colleagues know what that is, but I am very familiar with it.
Yeah, so when they say restrict access, it's actually at 241st. So in that little blue dot on the screen, that's the 241st intersection. Right now you can turn left, you have full access through there, turn left, right, through and all that. Because there's that congestion and queuing, they recommended basically limiting that to right in, right out. So they would probably put some type of median barrier in that location. So people coming from the side streets wouldn't be able to make left turns in or out of that intersection. So people would, if they wanted to make any lefts in and out, would have to go up to the 244th or other intersections to make those movements.
It seems to me that the problem would be, and again, there is a large amount of people that live in that development. That's where I grew up at, down in that hole. There's massive houses and people have the ability to do commerce where they do commerce. If I was still living there, and I haven't lived there for 42 years, but if I want to go to Blue Max, I should be able to make a right-hand turn and go to Blue Max. And yes, I do understand people cut through, but I get it. But you cannot disenfranchise. And again, that is unincorporated King County, but with the entire project, we can't disenfranchise those people that live there to not be able to go either way they want to go get their whatever it is, their prescriptions, their groceries, their kids at daycare, whatever it is. So that's all.
Okay. And periodically on state highways, the intent is to move traffic. And so sometimes WashDOT recommends limiting access for mobility's sake. We'll just leave it at that because we didn't really get into the restriction of that access in our study. But let's move on and kind of talk about the next thing. So other midterm strategies. And so again, this would be midterm. They said the SR 165 intersection would be to extend that westbound or southbound left turn lane as you're coming down from Main Street. So extending that center left turn lane or converting that one to a roundabout. And they also recommend roundabouts at Mundy Loss and Samansky Street. Some long-term options. So now they're saying closer to 2040. So that 20-year forecast, they're mentioning that you might as well be thinking about doing 2 lanes in each direction. So a 4-lane corridor or a 5-lane corridor, meaning there's 2 lanes in each direction with the center turn lane. So that was kind of the long-term, that 20-year forecast. And then the conclusion from that study was, well, yes, we need a widening of the White River Bridge, but it would not be needed until after 2040 sometime. And that's kind of how it was left for the White River Bridge. So that's the study recommendations from that particular study. There was a lot of questions still about that, those priority recommendations about roundabouts at Park and Main and some of these other things. So if we go to the next slide, we talk about the purpose of this updated analysis. So at the time, they did kind of a high level analysis saying, yeah, let's do roundabouts there. It should work. This particular analysis is we want to dive in deeper. So there's more detailed analysis of those strategies, particularly converting Park and Main to roundabouts. And we wanted to use a micro simulation of the corridor because we know that there's that queuing that goes across the bridge, so that westbound or southbound traffic coming across from King County, Pierce County, we know that there's that queuing. And so we wanted to do a micro simulation to kind of see exactly what would be happening and be able to show that to you guys. We wanted to update the analysis with 2025 traffic information. So we got new counts. So instead of using 2018 data, we got 2025 data. And then we also wanted to say, hey, let's just, what if we left it at a traffic signal instead of the roundabouts? What would that look like? Yeah, Park and Main. So that was the purpose of the study, is to kind of do that deeper dive and do some alternative analysis. Next slide. So wanted to talk a little bit about existing traffic just to kind of understand what's going on in the corridor. What you're seeing on the screen are graphs of showing traffic volumes at 3 different locations. So this is the traffic traveling along SR 410. The top one is for westbound or southbound traffic. And then the bottom one is eastbound or northbound traffic. At 3 different locations. At one at Warner Avenue, which is kind of closer to the Bonnie Lake side. Then you have, actually no, Warner's up closer to Enumclaw. And then Park Avenue, and then Mundy Loss is on the west side of town. So probably the biggest highlight to show there is that it looks like that lighter blue line on the top graph. You can kind of see where it's highlighted in yellow. That's the PM peak hour. And so typically whenever there's a peak period, it looks like kind of a mountain peak. There's a, you know, it kind of goes up to a point and then comes back down. Whenever you see it kind of flattening out like that, it means there's a capacity constraint in the corridor. And basically that capacity constraint is Park Avenue. There's not enough capacity to pump all the traffic that wants to get through Park on that westbound or southbound direction. So that's why you see that kind of flat. So that's what, you know, from a traffic engineer, some of the things you see. The other ones just kind of show that they're kind of further away and don't have the same level of traffic volumes, just because, you know, traffic kind of disperses by the time it gets to those points further away from the city. In the eastbound, that kind of shows the morning peak. So the morning peak's not as pronounced. It still does have that peak. That's more of a traditional peak. You know, usually it's associated with schools in the morning, but what you're seeing there is it's not really hitting a capacity constraint as of yet in the existing conditions. So this is one of the reasons we focused on the west, you know, the PM peak, because that's where we really saw the capacity constraint. We also know that that's where a lot of that queuing across the bridge is happening as well. All right, so again, this is from March 2025, just for reference. Next slide. Just from a daily perspective, there's also some kind of rules of thumb about how much traffic can go on a 3-lane corridor through an urban area, and this also kind of confirms that there's a lot of demand for Park Avenue, and we're already kind of at that rule of thumb capacity constraint. So it just means that a 3-lane, you know, a 1 lane in each direction, you know, with some separate turn lanes is already we're already at that daily traffic volume where some places are recommending, you know, widening to add more capacity. Just also for reference, on the right is just classification. So 90% of the traffic on this corridor over the course of the day is just your typical cars, single unit cars, and then the 11%, the remainder, is your single unit trucks or buses or multi-unit, you know, semi trucks kind of a thing. So about 10%, 10 to 11% is the bigger vehicles. 90% is your typical auto vehicle. Next slide. So this is the fun one for all the techie people out there. So this is kind of the heat maps that Don was talking about. So the way that you read this is, you know, if you've ever pulled up like Google Maps and you see red lines and green lines showing, you know, where there's traffic congestion, you can kind of think of that like in the column. So each column represents kind of a time slice. So what you're seeing is a time slice from 2 o'clock all the way over to 7 o'clock. And then as each time slice from the left to the right, so the graph on the left is representing southbound or westbound traffic. So traffic coming from King County into Buckley and then on further on. So I'm just going to talk about the left side for right now. You have at the very top, you have that Warner 460 56 intersection. That's, you know, north of the school on the King County side. Then you have Samansky and then 244th. And then right in the center of that graph, you have what's the bridge, the White River Bridge. Then you get down south to Park and then Main, and then further on to 165, and then at the very bottom is Monday Lost. So what you're seeing here is, you know, at 2 o'clock, you're not seeing a whole lot of traffic congestion through the corridor, but once you get to the 3 o'clock hour, you see that the Park Avenue that's basically where you have a capacity constraint. And so traffic is behind that or above that in this graph is showing slower speeds. And that's why you see that kind of red blob that's showing starting in the 3 o'clock hour. And then it really gets going about 3:30 to 4. It shows that basically a queue is forming all the way from Park Avenue, kind of a rolling queue between Park and 244th, and then really stop and go after that all the way up to Samansky. This is based off of travel time data, kind of big, you know, the same type of data that Google uses, that kind of big data sources. We got some of that data, and that's what's showing here. So what you're seeing, so that blob basically is that queue that forms most weeknights, and then it starts from Park and then scoots all its way up to Samansky. In the AM, you don't see very much queuing. There's just a 2-hour thing in that same on the right of that same graph. On the right side is the opposite direction. So think of it if you're traveling to King County from Buckley, going from Monday Lost up to 244th. There's hardly much congestion, much delays through that corridor in the PM peak hour. We do see in that there's those little slices to the right. There's some congestion right at the 7:30 hour. It's probably due to school traffic at at very peaky point, and then all of a sudden it dissipates after that. So this is data that was collected. This is from the field. This is kind of what's happening, and we use this to try to calibrate our models, and also just kind of to understand what's happening with the alternatives analysis. And we'll have similar type graphs to talk about the future alternatives. All right, let's go to the next slide. So in our study, we focused on the PM peak hour, like I said, and then the blue dots you see on the right are the intersections where we got traffic counts, and also just other data. We also got travel time data from that big data source, so we could get a really good solid average travel time through the corridor. And so that's what we were trying to calibrate the model to, is those different factors, the queuing, the travel, traffic volumes, and also travel times. Next slide. So the other thing we needed to do is come up with a 20-year forecast. We did look at a variety of sources. Just the short story here is, the PSRC model has some more recent data than the previous study, the WSDOT study, but it showed a much lower growth rate. We preferred to try to be closer to what the previous study assumed. So the previous study, the WSDOT corridor study, assumed between a 1% and 2% annual growth rate for the 20 years. We assumed very similar for our analysis. So we took the 2025 volumes and grew them by these same annual growth percentages to kind of mimic the same thing. More conservative, meaning higher, so that it will show a little bit more impacts in the future. But one of the main purposes going back was to kind of ground truth what was coming out of the WSDOT study. So we wanted to be kind of similar with their growth rates. All right, next slide. So this is just documenting what the existing and future turning movements at the intersection. So the way that you look at this kind of spreadsheet diagram is, you can see the turning movements, or the left turns, the throughs, and the rights at these two intersections. The number in the very center of each of these squares is the total entering traffic. So like, for instance, at Park, there's 200, in the PM peak hour, there's 2285 number of vehicles moving through that intersection. In the future, that bumps up to 2720. Southbound, coming from the bridge, you get that 1295 is the total volume coming into this intersection. And that grows to close to almost 1500. So it's quite a bit of volume in existing conditions, and then it just gets even higher in the future. Next slide. So the microsimulation scenarios, we basically looked at 3 different scenarios. We looked at the existing, because with any type of modeling, we have to calibrate it to the existing conditions, make sure that the existing model is predicting existing conditions pretty well. And then we will put in the new inputs, the volumes, to test the future scenarios. So we have an existing calibration scenario. Then we have the 2 action scenarios. We didn't do actually a no action, because the existing was pretty bad already. We already know that. No action would be even worse. But we do have the 2 future. One is the action. We're calling, quote unquote, the action, because that is what was recommended in the WSDOT study. That is roundabouts. So in the action scenario, we would convert Park Avenue and Main Street to single lane roundabouts, because that's what was assumed in the study. So one circulating lane at the roundabout. We did also assume a minor modification at the 165 signal, but for the most part, that signal would operate very similar. It's just an added northbound right coming from the 165 leg. Basically, the leg that has McDonald's on it, there'd be an extra northbound right turn lane. And then we also added as much capacity as possible to the 244th intersection to try to not make that a pinch point, to allow more volume from King County. So that was the action alternative. The alternative action was basically the same thing, except we were going to modify the signals. We were going to keep it signals, the existing condition signals. However, we know that there's a pinch point there. So we were actually going to widen the corridor just in the southbound or westbound direction to 2 lanes. So there'd be 2 lanes coming into that intersection, and 2 through lanes that would pass through the intersection going down to Main, the park intersection going down to Main, and then 2 through lanes also continuing through Main, down until you get to 167 where it transitions back to 1 lane. So it would be just a 4-lane section. So we're not widening both sides, both directions, just the southbound or westbound side is what the assumption was. So next slide kind of shows that a diagram of what we're trying to get at there. Well, diagrams for the different scenarios. So the action scenario or the roundabouts, this diagram shows screenshots of the micro simulation that we put together, and it basically shows the footprints. So if roundabouts were put in here, single lane roundabouts, this is about the footprint or the scale of how big these roundabouts would be. And it kind of shows how the roundabouts would encroach on the within the right of way or encroach on other properties and near the intersection. Kind of gives you a sense of what it would look like. We are talking about single lane roundabouts, even though it kind of looks like there's multiple lanes in there. What we assumed was a separate right turn lane that kind of scooted around. But basically that means a multi-lane or a 2-lane roundabout would be about the same size you see here anyway. So whether we're talking about single lane or multi-lane roundabouts, the footprint you're seeing here is about the impacts. Now, just know that if they actually were building these type of roundabouts, they would also have to add little extra for sidewalks and things on the outside. So it'd be a little bit bigger footprint than just the gray lines that you're showing there. Next slide talks about the kind of the signals, how the signals would work. So like we talked about previously, so we would expand the southbound side of the intersection. So you're coming, say like you're coming from King County and coming down, instead of just having 1 through lane, you would have 2 through lanes through the intersection. And so you would widen just on that left side of the screen of that corridor. Northbound, there would not be any widening. It would just be how existing conditions is. Up at Park, there is a separate right turn lane, a separate left turn lane. So it does show like 3 there, but it's really just 1 through lane coming from Main Street. Same thing down on the left graphic is Main Street. It would be a similar situation where you have just 1 through lane northbound. You have separate left turn lanes, and then 2 southbound or westbound lanes through the corridor. Next slide. This graphic is just trying to explain that you're going to have 2 through lanes, but we would transition back down to 1 lane once you got down to the SR 165 intersection. So the alternatives are basically assuming the SR 165 intersection is largely unchanged from existing. There might be a few tweaks with a separate turn lane, but largely like it would not be expanded beyond what it already is. It would still be a signal. So both alternatives assume that same condition. All right, next slide. So just brief note on the calibration. WSDOT has standards that say, when you meet certain criteria, it means the micro simulation was calibrated. We met all those tolerances, so we checked that box. We did have some fun time at the 244th intersection because that intersection, there's just a lot going on there when it comes to driver behavior. So that is you know, when with the queuing across the bridge, there was some unique driver behavior. I'll just leave it at that. Next slide. So these go back to those action heat maps. So what we did on the left is basically what our model was predicting. So we did the model, calibrated it, and it showed a little bit more delays between Park Avenue and 244th. So what you're seeing here is basically between Park Avenue and 244th in existing conditions is you have kind of this rolling queue where there's this queue where it's not completely stop and go, but it is kind of this rolling queue. And you see that between Park Avenue across the bridge up to 244th. Once you get up to 244th, it's definitely stop and go there. That's kind of the pinch point for things in existing conditions. And in the future, it gets much more pronounced with the higher volumes because we are assuming higher demand in the future. On the right is also the same direction. So we're comparing apples to apples on both sides here. Flow is going down southbound or westbound. When we do the single lane roundabout, we can pump more traffic through, but it's about the same as existing conditions. So there is more capacity, but there's also more demand. So you're getting about the same rolling queues between Park and 244th, and then stop and go behind it. That's the roundabout situation. Go to the next slide. So for the alternative where you actually have 2 through lanes, that actually cleans up the Park Avenue intersection. The Park Avenue is no longer the capacity constraint. You can see on the right side, it's all green between Park Avenue and 244th. 244th is still a capacity constraint. That's where the merge is, where you got people coming down 244th and people coming from Enumclaw and 410. They're trying to merge and get to single lane across the bridge, and that's causing that bottleneck. But that's King County side. On the Buckley side, the Park Avenue is no longer the capacity constraint with the signal, the 2 southbound through lanes. Next slide.
So I just wanted to jump in here real quick. So
Sure.
So on this slide, the left side, so the left side on these 2 slides is the same. So if you look at the shape on the left side there and there, it's the exact same. The right side, this one is the roundabouts. This one is the signal modifications. So if you look at just the eye test on how much red there is, it appears that when we go to the alternate action, there's less red, including, you know, if you look down towards the bottom where the park part is, which is kind of below the red mountain in this slide. If you look on the next, you look on the prior one with the roundabouts, it kind of smears the red in that you're getting some throughput. But correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, but these heat maps are really showing that the alternate action in terms of it actually looks better in terms of the total kind of red.
Correct. And basically what this is saying is there's the demand is high enough that you really need the 2 lanes through the park intersection. Those 2 westbound, southbound lanes, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And that really opens up the capacity. So then really it's the bridge becomes the issue, because that merging is to get to the 1 lane is what's causing that big old red mountain there. But once you get down to Park, if you have 2 southbound lanes, 2 westbound lanes, that opens up that capacity, and so you don't get any more red there.
Okay, now we'll move on to the.
Yeah, so these next 2 slides are same idea, but just in the northbound direction, north or eastbound, northbound direction. So in the opposite direction. So the left side is existing. The right side is the roundabout. So you do see some additional like delays with the roundabout, but everything is generally not too bad. It calms down once it gets to the intersection. It doesn't spill, too far back. At the very top is really 244. So you'll notice that it's basically there's congestion to that 244. There might be there's capacity issues kind of northbound left because there's a lot of things going on up there. But if you just focus in the city itself, generally the roundabouts are working okay. And then you go to the next slide. Again, it's kind of compare and contrast. When you're looking just at the park and the Buckley side, it's very similar to the previous slide. The big smear up there is due to issues with the 244th intersection north of the river. And that actually is spilling back down to the Park Avenue in the reverse direction for a variety of reasons. But assuming that there's lots of improvements up there, that smear would go away. And so like basically through the city, it's not really a problem on the northbound direction. So just like existing conditions, we wouldn't expect huge problems in the northbound or westbound or eastbound condition.
And again, I would just note that, in the northbound direction, in terms of the part in Buckley, the difference between the action and the alternate action, there's not much of effect in Buckley. And what happens more is north of the bridge, there's some issues that kind of have to do with their problem over there and how they might fix it.
So now we're going to just show some simulation videos just to kind of show what the analysis that we did. So Dom's going to bring that up. There's 3 different videos. One's going to be the existing, one's the alternative, and one's the alternative action. So basically you got the signal and then the signals, the roundabouts and the signals. So the first video is meant to just kind of show what the simulation that we did, what it looks like for existing conditions. And so with existing conditions, basically for that southbound, it does, traffic is flowing through there, but it has kind of like, it has those, in the traffic world, we call it shockwaves, but kind of like that rolling queue that goes across and then you stop and then you can go again and whatnot. So that's spilling all the way back up. 244th is kind of shown there on the bottom left. 244th is the top. So in our simulation, we're getting quite a bit of queuing once you get to that merge point. That's existing conditions. Then we'll look at the roundabout.
I'm just going to replay that one just because it's fairly short, and I just so, if you guys don't mind, just wanted to.
That actually.
I'm hoping everybody can get oriented where we are. This is right there. Yep.
And obviously queue up any questions.
Brent, is the color of the vehicles significant?
No, it's just random.
Okay. I didn't know if red was trucks. It looks like sometimes the red ones are longer.
You'll see kind of bigger looking worms, and those are the big trucks. Kind of a thing. Bigger pills and little pills. Like there, and you can see it's the big blue guys. Those would be trucks. But yeah, the colors are just random for this particular exercise.
Okay, this is going to be you'll be able to see.
So these next 2, we just focused on park just to kind of get a sense again, also what it would look like footprint wise. Just to get a sense of, where, how traffic would operate through there and how things would look. This is just kind of showing that there is there can be a little bit of a stack up, and it has a similar as existing conditions where you do get kind of that stop and go across the bridge, and you do get gaps, but then there's more issues upstream. But that's the roundabout.
Sorry, I'm gonna do all these twice, and we can always go back to these because they're pretty short. But
Yeah.
this is just the roundabout again.
The actual simulation that we did is that whole study corridor. So we can, if there is questions about different parts of the corridor, we can actually zoom into those at another time or get you some different metrics if needed. But we just wanted to focus on park because that's kind of the focus of like, okay, you know, what really is happening there if we did a roundabout.
Okay, this one's alternative action.
So this one's the future, but it's keeping a signal. You just now have 2 southbound lanes. And once you have that 2 southbound lanes, that pretty much clears out the traffic volumes. Note that like further upstream, that collapses just down to 1 lane across the bridge. So it's not 2 lanes all the way across the bridge. It's just once you get past the bridge, it does widen to 2 lanes in this particular scenario. We're also assuming, he's going to play that again, that we would adjust the east and west approaches so that you would have a separate turn lane, left turn lane, that would allow traffic not to get stuck behind left turning vehicles if they're going through. That should help things during school times and just regular times. So if you are going to make some changes here, might as well make changes to all the different approaches just to kind of clean it up and get some more efficiency out of it. So really the only slide after that is just talking about conclusions. The conclusion basically is you're going to really have the benefits and to get traffic moving through the town with these 20-year volumes is having that 2 southbound lanes through town. You don't necessarily need 2 northbound lanes, but you could widen the 2 southbound lanes. And if you were going to do a roundabout, the recommendation would be to have 2 southbound lanes. So it'd be a multi-lane roundabout. So if we didn't look at this specifically, but my assumption and guess would be if you had 2 southbound lanes and a multi-lane roundabout, it would probably work fairly well, similar to the signal situation. But it would have that large, obviously the roundabouts would have the larger footprint at the intersection. So assuming you get 2 lanes through there, that would resolve the capacity through the town. And then the last note there is, once you resolve the capacity through town, especially with Park, then truly the bridge itself across the river is the capacity constraint. And that would be the next thing that you would need to resolve to really get more traffic through town. Because really traffic is backing up at that north of the bridge trying to get down to 1 lane. But you can get more capacity by widening to that 2nd southbound lane on the Buckley side. And that can, you can do that with a signal and stay mostly within the right of way, or you can do the roundabout suggestion, but it does have a larger footprint. And that's basically the conclusions that we came to with this analysis. Anything else?
The council for Mr. Turley.
But
That's more Sharma.
it just seems like with the 2 lanes, it makes sense, but wouldn't it just push our problem from Park to
165.
165?
Actually, not really, because there's a lot of traffic at 165 that wants to turn left and go south. So the demand kind of splits up there. So that you do have a kind of the pinch point, you know, if you're looking at the pinch point is between 165 and, you know, to Park or beyond Park. But once you get down to 165, there's a lot of left turning traffic. So once you get the left turning traffic out of the way, the through lane doesn't need 2 lanes through there yet. I mean, obviously, if you're looking 30 years out, you're probably going to need the 2 lanes through the whole corridor. So, but as from a phasing perspective, you can get by with getting that back down to 1 lane, because there's so many left turning vehicles at 160.
And I would add, I think there is some offloading in the corridor. You have westbound traffic that is turning right onto Park. So you
True. Yeah.
100% of, and that was part of that, the one figure with the boxes that showed you have right turns. You also have traffic that gets all the way to Main, takes a right on Main to head over to Natchez and Old Southern Berkeley Highway. So 100% of the traffic that's coming across the bridge is not even making it to 165. So removing kind of the bottleneck there at Park, you know, pushes through. I would say probably ultimately when you then remove kind of the next big bottleneck, which would be the White River Bridge, then you probably are looking at 165 ultimately as a long-term doing something maybe different there or carrying through. But that gets into the 2 lanes all the way through the city. 2 lanes each direction, the 4-lane concept that ultimately could occur. I would just say, and this is not to right, wrong, or indifferent about our current mayor, but Mr. Common Sense here probably could have told you this stuff. Meaning that the mayor had been looking and trying to work with WashDOT on optimizing the signal at Park. So what it turns out is, and again, it's common sense to some degree, but it's supported by this detailed technical analysis that is, it's not really just messing with the signal at Park and the timing, it's adding the lane. It's adding, so you have 2 through lanes and a right turn lane there. You look at, I know it's a little bit auxiliary, but you look at dedicated left turn lanes on the 2 side streets on Park coming in both from the true east and west. So it's in my mind, it's not that roundabouts don't work. It's just that adding the lanes works also, and the roundabout is not markedly better than the signal modifications until such time that that bridge is widened. Which just cutting through some of this is kind of what some of my takeaways are, and I know that like I said, it sounds simple, and maybe we, you know, went a long way around it to get to the same place. But I will tell you that every bit of this technical analysis, WashDOT requires 100% to do anything within their, you know, SR 410 corridor to make modifications. You got to have the supporting stuff. It's necessary. But so I wanted to interject that just as a follow-up. I don't want to mischaracterize what you said in the past, Bo, but that was my takeaway from our prior looking at it with the operations staff at WashDOT.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I mean, in a perfect world, if we could get this done in a year or 2 years or whatever that looks like, it's not realistic. But let's say we got all this done tomorrow. We either did a 2-lane roundabout at Park, or we widen it to 2 lanes all the way up to 165, whenever that's gonna happen. The minute the bridge gets, decades down the road, when the bridge goes to 4 lanes, we're gonna stack a whole bunch of them. We're gonna do this whole exercise again. You know, we'll have to open it up at 165 because we're gonna start bottlenecking at 165 there. Cause we've got our part of it taken care of, and then once King County and the state do the bridge, then it's all, you know, we're back to square one again, kind of. But this, yeah, it's, nobody's gonna take my word or even Dom's professional word for it. This is the data you have to move forward, so.
But there are a lot of vehicles that turn left and right off of 410 in our little city. So it makes sense to me to have 2 lanes going
To Monday Lost.
southbound, whichever way you want to call it, westbound, southbound, all the way down to 165 anyway, and then later on, they can, Pierce County or whoever can work on.
Yeah, we'll be responsible all the way to Monday Lost for the foreseeable future,
Okay.
but. Yeah, at $3 million a mile or whatever it would cost to widen the road, yeah, we're only gonna do what, you know.
Yeah.
What we have to do. Or get grants for, or what have you, but yeah, no, it's all good work, it's all stuff that we can see on the
Mhm.
daily. Has there, first off, I guess, do we share this with WashDOT at a given time, or we,
We will.
yeah, okay.
The plan is to, incorporate the, recommendations in what is called the local road safety plan, which is a plan that have been working on that looks at citywide. It looks at crash data. It looks at where your safety concerns are. It looks at, traffic problems, holistically for the whole city. And then this piece of it is looking at, it really is the corridor that was the detailed modeling that has been presented here, where you just don't do this level analysis on
A
Main Street or A Street or your local roads. And then the actual, so there's that planning document, which you received a grant through Safe Streets for All to do. But then the actual submittal to WashDOT, they want all of the name of the software is called Vissim. They want the files, they want the modeling, those videos you saw go a lot further than that. And they want to confirm the assumptions and I think the calibration. And that's why I think one of the things you mentioned, Brent, that all the calibration and everything is done in accordance with WashDOT requirements, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Just for that
So-
case, because we know that we're gonna have to talk to them, and if you want to do any of those improvements, they'll be looking at this and using this to justify those improvements. Yeah.
The one little video that you had on the existing, on the way it is right now, I think you need to add more cars there because usually the cars are stopped. So it seemed to me like it was actually moving pretty good. So if you're going to use this to show WashDOT, you need to show them exactly how we get
Yeah,
stopped.
Yeah, we had to pick we actually simulated it for 5 hours, a theoretical 5-hour time, and we pulled out 30 seconds. So we could find a different spot that looks a little bit worse for sure.
Yeah.
Like 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then they probably want that. For for the projections at the same time frame,
Right.
and they'll check
Yeah.
on that.
And I
Yeah.
think that yeah, I tried to do it twice, but as it panned north, as you got on the other side of the bridge, there were some I think more significant backups because
Maybe they were just so teeny.
yeah, sorry,
It's hard
that's
to say, but
because I think sometimes if you're coming from Enumclaw, once you actually hit the bridge, it's not clear sailing, but
it starts moving a
You're
little.
moving for the most part.
It's all the people coming off of 244th, getting onto 410 or not Monday Lost Road.
On Mountain Dam
Mountain Dam Road.
Yeah, there was,
trying to get in with all these that are back all the way to Samansky, you know, and it ties it up, you're stopped.
Let's just call it what it is. I've said it a million times at this table in the last 8 years. This is 167's failure. And people that work north and they choose to live out here in this great place somewhere in Pierce County, they're not going to sit on 167 to come up 410 up Eli Hill. They do all this because human beings are smart. They're going to take the path of least resistance, and we have a failed state highway system at 167. And that's what they do. And all the talk of people turning off here, and Dom's exactly right. They're taking Park to go to the old Buckley or Sumner Highway, or they're taking Main Street to, or Warner to do the same thing. Not Warner, doesn't matter. Yes. That's the problem. And then this was obviously going to be a WashDOT project. And so they're going to give us, or whoever's still alive at that time, this, whatever they want to give you. I agree exactly with Dom's analysis that there's going to be less red with cars. I can tell you since whatever the mayor's magic and whoever else helped with WashDOT, I now takes me longer to get from the west side of 410 across, but that's fine.
Welcome.
I accept it because traffic is flowing. Traffic is doing much better. And for whatever reason, we've had this bridge closure for August till whenever it opened up. Traffic hasn't been bad. I went over to Enumclaw today at 2:45, came back at 3 something. I did not stop except for normal traffic. Again, it's a Tuesday and traffic is cyclical. You know, it's got weird days. But our problem is 167, and I think the real, and I've said it before here multiple times, the state ought to go to the tribe, the Muckleshoot tribe of Indians, and make a compact with them to put a bridge across the White River, right around the amphitheater, to come out on the Taps Highway, and you eliminate all this. Everybody that's going out in the country here, that's their way when they're coming from working in the big city up there. But that's those of us that can think for ourselves. But yes, I appreciate the analysis of the red, of what that's going to look like, but WashDOT's going to dictate it. Councilmember Green, I apologize.
Oh, no, no problem. So, with the conclusions here, like with the 2 lanes being built out or the roundabouts, either way, alleviating some of that red, 2 lanes looks better for sure. Does that also, that assumes that the roundabouts are also being put in on the other side of the bridge? Is that correct? Or is this just like, what happens over there to make this happen?
So what we assumed is we put a signal, just because it's a little bit simpler to model. We assumed a signal at the 244th intersection.
Okay.
But even then, that wasn't doing too hot because it still had to neck down to 1 lane to get across the bridge. So there was a lot of queues there. So it was limiting the amount. But we did actually assume a signal at 244th in the future.
Last I heard, that was the hot item of the day on the King County side, was adding a light there, which will do absolutely nothing in my lowly explanation. Just it'll be like being in Seattle. Great. The light's green, but I can't go because there's traffic over there. So a light there will not produce any, positive effect in my eyes.
Well, people are already being their own light. They're stopping, it's backed up, and people are polite and they let somebody coming in off of 244th to go onto eastbound 410. And then, I mean, it works that way. And I don't think I've ever seen a jerk.
And then at 10 a.m., somebody slams on their brakes to let somebody out of their road too. So
Well, that's being stupid. We gotta let the stuff
what's
flow.
going on here? And it'll be
Yeah, that's what we modeled basically, is that situation where it was that stop and go and weird driver behavior. That was the kind of the hard one to but yeah, what you're saying about a signal up there is exactly what we're saying. Like what we found is, yeah, it will add more uh orderly traffic, I guess. It's not so like niceness, but yeah, you'll be stopped at a light. It'll be green and you can't move.
Yeah, even if they made a roundabout there tomorrow, you'll be stuck in the roundabout. Everybody will do the same thing. That you'll spend how many ever millions for a roundabout that we've got to get. Park is the current bottleneck. I think we figured that out. Now we know for sure. And the bridges will be the next bottleneck and but again, for Buckley and for us and for Gray and Osborne and our span of control is a very small, what they do on that side of the bridge is way outside it helps WashDOT hopefully plan on their side. But it's out of our purview and they barely care about us talking about our section. They're gonna be like, wait, get on your side of the bridge over there.
We would have to have a training session to, pack the high school gymnasium to teach people how to drive in the roundabout. I mean, there's a couple in Enumclaw and it's not, I've been driving roundabout since I've been in my early 20s. I mean, it's not rocket science. If you can yield to oncoming traffic, you can do a roundabout, but some people just can't figure it out.
Speaking of that, Chris, that might just be something if you want to note down for next year or what have you. The seniors in this building
Yes.
would love something like that because they really don't understand it. They literally will go down Monday Lost now because they're like, I'm not driving through that roundabout. Again, not our problem really, but our seniors are like, they're like, I'm taking Monday Lost or Old Buckley Highway. I will not drive through that roundabout because they don't know what to do there, which is smart. That's good. Don't put yourself in a bad predicament.
The people that do know how to drive a roundabout though, they go through that roundabout pretty fast.
I love that.
So as far as the seniors go, I can see why they're intimidated.
Oh, yeah, there's
I don't
people,
like them.
it's NASCAR.
Yeah, that's the way Steve and I went through it this morning. It was like, aren't you supposed to slow down? Yeah.
So I want to add a couple more things, because you know me, I just can't help myself. So you may be saying, okay, well, what's the next step and how's WashDOT involved and what, what is with kind of telegraphing the punch here. WashDOT as an agency is all in on roundabouts. They don't like signals. They don't like the cost of maintaining signals. They'll tell you it's not a secret. They want roundabouts. They want roundabouts. They want roundabouts. So there's some strategy involved in what I would call, hey, this interim solution of going with the additional lane, which I don't think it's going to be. We're working on cost estimates on the alternates. You'll see it. I think the roundabouts are going to be more expensive. It's not going to be like double, but it's going to be an issue. But I would just highlight, and I'll get back to the slide showing the roundabout here on the right at Park. I mean, I'm not using the term that it's quite blotting out the sun, but if you look at the northwest corner, the house is not going to be able to stay there.
That was my grandmother's house. And
Well-
they already paid with the last traffic light thing.
Yes.
During her estate thing, they paid $7,500 to put the vault in that yard. There is no place to put that roundabout left there.
Okay, and Wally's we're kind of trying to stay away from there, and there's not as much there, but just the
Imminent
right of way acquisition, the tearing down a house, and
Yeah.
like Brent said, this isn't showing sidewalks on the outside. I mean, you do have sidewalks on the legs of these roundabouts. You could have flashing beacons, pedestrian connectivity. So from a standpoint of just again, not to sugarcoat things, hey, the traffic modeling says we modify signals, add a lane, it works. We agree, we looked at roundabouts, we looked here, oh, gulp, that's one. Okay, WashDOT, after you get that second bridge, we'll take a hard look at that. But until such time, there really isn't a market benefit. And now WashDOT talks about life cycle cost, pedestrian safety. Understood, but it's politically for the city of Buckley, and you guys are the politics of Buckley. How are you gonna go to a property owner saying, we have to do that? We have this other option, it works too. Actually, it kind of works a little better, but
But we're not gonna go.
we need that. Never mind the
Yeah.
time, the money. So I just am not, and really you guys are the ones who set the direction. You guys there right now, we plan on writing up the report saying we evaluated both options, the alternate works. The proposal would be to do the alternate action, and it doesn't mean we're saying never will it ever happen that we go with the roundabouts, but really it wouldn't be the interim solution. Now, interim can be 25 years. I honestly don't think that bridge will show up in 20 years. It may end up being where Enumclaw and King County has to put the pressure on WashDOT. It's not that, I don't think Buckley would be against widening that bridge. It would bring with it some other issues, but again, we could literally cross that bridge when we get there, because it would be there.
We got two bridges.
Well, and to your point, Don, that I can tell you from my phenomenal experience with the bridge strike. King County swings the hammer. They did not listen to, they didn't even ask. But that is where the pressure will come from the commerce, the dairies, the and the horse money and all of that, and Enumclaw and King County will force that. But in this particular scenario, those folks all live over here from what we can tell from the traffic modeling, they're trying to get home to Pierce County. So the pressure won't come from King County until it affects their residents, in a more negative way, in my opinion.
Understood. And I think that that one of the things that, and this is just Dom talking, obviously the bridge goes across the Flume and it goes across the White River. So it's not literally widening a bridge. There's two bridges. And by the way, they're not going to widen the bridge. They're likely going to construct two new bridges to the east, is my opinion. Just in looking at the lay of the land, because how do you go to the west? I mean, you're out.
Yeah.
It's different. For one, the Flume widens out.
You got a cemetery there. Yeah.
Yes,
It's an inconvenient truth.
that's right. There is, but you have a cemetery, but you have abutments that you can set on each side.
Okay, yes.
But up to them to figure out. It's not a city project or, King County. And then King County, I just wonder, I understand they have political will and political hammer, but they also are pinched. It's just a strip of King County, pinched between Buckley and Enumclaw. How much of their political capital are they going to use with WashDOT to address that piece? Maybe, but again, it's something that's not too much in our hands, and I don't know. Brandon, if you have a perspective on PSRC's kind of role. They were mentioned here because they have a Southtown traffic model that they created that, Brent and his people certainly looked at. I don't know how or where to get that on board with them. I don't know if you have thoughts on.
It's a good
What
question.
you've seen
I can bring that up with
elsewhere.
the TCC. And see their thoughts on that, and how that works. At the PCRC, like the levers we usually pull is like the legislative agenda, but then it's tough because we're talking about King County, not Pierce County. And that's been an issue in the past with some stuff near Fort Lewis, which we did get on the agenda. But yeah, I'd have to take that up with the TCC probably and see what their thoughts are, and then kind of escalate that.
Yeah, I guess I mean, if it, the city's sets its own transportation priorities, and if this is rising to, this is our number one priority. I know in the past, I don't know, I think it's been identified as a legislative priority or to study it and look at it, which, again, simplistic, that it's like, with my kids and everything, you keep sliding something under their nose and, sometimes they're like,
Yeah.
fine, we'll fund that thing just to get rid of you guys, go away.
We've been hearing this for 18 years, yeah.
But it's, leaving no stone unturned if they have it there. I think sometimes through that funding, I get a little, same with WashDOT, it seems like you kind of get on the slow train and we're used to doing, you do a local project and, you can get TIB funding and, we find out in November and, we're building the thing in June. I mean, it's a go, it's a local project, we can go. But, that's not what this is. So there's not that, expectation, but it also, it'd be nice to do sooner than later. And by the way, just right away acquisition, I mean, just even if it was a minor strip, the way WashDOT has requirements and how you have to do the appraisals and the offers and the whole process. I mean, just tack on, a year and a half just for that process. Whereas if we're adding a lane in existing WashDOT right away, you still have to certify the right of way, make sure, hey, we're doing everything in the right of way. There's no acquisitions, but you're able to then, get out of that right of way phase and get onto your other phases, which are, we're in what is called the planning phase by WashDOT, but the next, the real phases are the engineering phase and then construction, everybody's favorite, so.
One thing I'd like to touch on that you touched on earlier is the pedestrian connectivity. We joked about pedestrian overpass or a tunnel, was something to get them across the highway at some point and I don't know how that plays into this, because even with the roundabout, once school lets out, then everybody's waiting for the kids to get across the highway from, east to west and vice versa in the morning. I don't know if you guys will look at that. This is mostly for the vehicles, but that's definitely a piece of this because of the school being right there.
Yeah, and I think that somewhat with certainly say pedestrian crossings, but somewhat with the timing of it, I know the backup does happen starting at 3 sometimes, but the timing of school being let out and the buses getting through, that's one of the kind of benefits, although it spills into other areas, is the routes the buses take is an impact. It's a little before the PM peak, the traditional 4 PM to 6 PM peak, but it's it's certainly trying to optimize that, and that may look at things on the safety. You're going to have different sections through there, but it's certainly a consideration we'd be looking at. But there's nothing, pedestrian crossings with roundabouts, the safety factor of it, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, but I believe it has to do with a lot of times vehicles are just going a lot slower through roundabouts. No one's blowing a orange, yellow turning red you know,
Right.
not happening. So the safety, including pedestrian safety, vehicle safety, it's, I believe I've heard just anecdotally that, you know, roundabouts, cars do slow, you have to slow down to get through, one to merge in, and, you know, you're not going, you, like the one out on 410 and on the way into Bonnie Lake, you know, you can try, I'm sure people have tried, but, you know, it's hard to go 60 right through one, so.
Well, you're gonna, yes, you're not gonna do too well.
Is that, speaking of that, is when you were talking about, it's not up there, but that, when we were looking at the property with Wally's and then your grandmother's old house, that slide with the roundabout, is there must be a requirement to have that circumference in the middle. For the life of me, I don't know why that has to be so big, other than for that reason to get people slowed down, because if it was a less aggressive curve, they could blow through it a lot faster. I mean, is there a way to constrict that so you don't have to take so much real estate? That's just, and then they put some ridiculous something in the middle usually.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, you're exactly correct. The reason why they do that is to try to slow people down. So it has to be big enough to try to slow people down and get kind of the merging and making things work. So when you get that multi-lane roundabout, or just these type of roundabouts, it does have to be bigger than just the, you know, a signal thing, because otherwise people will just blow through it. So you have to have that kind of deflection, they call it, so they will slow down.
First roundabouts I ever, up in city of Seattle, Capitol Hill and Columbia City, the roundabout was about the circumference of the middle of this table. And that was it. You know, but they were everywhere, every intersection. I mean, that was it, you know. and-
That was traffic calming.
A little
before there was-
traffic.
Yes.
Yeah, they could put a giant hornet or whatever like they did at the one in
You know,
They could put some obstacle that they can jump when they're drunk.
And the other thing they do is on the leg on the way in, they don't have you coming straight shot. They kind of make you curve, or
Yes, before you
they're
get-
S-ing you around some, which is like the one, you know, that's out of Fort Tooth.
Yeah, we didn't have that little deflection in the simulation, but yeah, it's exactly for that. It's more trying to teach the car to slow down.
Any other questions or comments on this juicy topic?
Well, thank you for all the work.
Yes.
I mean, it must be done. There's no other way, so.
Well, yeah, even if. What'd you call the phase we're in? The planning phase? Yes, and I fully understand that what their requirements are gonna be. It's not just, hey, we like to do this. You gotta do work.
Yep.
And then they're gonna analyze your work and they're gonna check it twice, right? And then they're gonna do what they're gonna do anyways. All right, move down to C, any council comments, whatnot? I've got nothing, nobody's got anything.
We will. Treva was gone today, but we're gonna try to have another study session on the 16th for anybody. We've got to get the notice out, but if for anybody, just if you can make it. We'll do a study session the 16th. It'll be the last one of the year.
What would be the topic for that study session?
There's a couple things.
Couple
but
items
yeah,
that didn't
yeah.
get it, make it tonight?
Yep.
Okay, anybody constrained on the 16th? Okay, I'm not, so that's fine, and we will be here next Tuesday for the regular council meeting. So given that, it's 7:17 PM on the 2nd of December. This will end the Buckley City Council study session.
Thanks, Brett.